I'm going to be talking about the text "And Widdecombe, we'd be better off if we kept to the Ten Commandments." The author is Benji Wilson, and the piece is published on the 2nd of February in 2010. The genre, I'd say, is an opinion piece, since we hear Anne Widdecombe's opinions on how Brits should live by the Ten Commandments more so than they do today. Um, it's also an article, I guess, because it's kind of just going into what she has to say about this subject and kind of just listing off a load of different things that she has to say about the subject. The topic is Christianity's re-implementation into British society. Essentially, she believes that Brits don't live by the Ten Commandments, or I mean, they don't live by religion as much as they used to. More specifically, the Ten Commandments. I mean, people are having premarital sex. I think another one is gambling. You know, the usual stuff that we see as regular everyday life, but in the eyes of a religious person, a Christian, would be sinning. Um, Also about how her Channel 4 show, um, The Bible, a History, and how even though she did extensive research during the creation of the show, that she hasn't really changed her views, her religious views at all. The medium is a web article posted on the telegraph.co.uk. Now, the audience, I'd say, they'd have to be highly educated, or at least educated to some degree further than, let's say, high school at least, primary school, because the words that are used there, so they're quite complex. I'll get to that in a bit. And also, other than the highly educated, conservatives, since Anne Widdecombe herself is a conservative member of Parliament. As I mentioned before, the author is Benji Wilson, and the structure of his text is, it's coherent, because first you have the introduction, like who is Anne Widdecombe, and what's she about, what does she think about this topic that she's chosen to talk about, and on why, essentially. She gives an explanation, and that has been included into the text, fortunately. The vocabulary of the text is, it's, as I said before, it's complex, so you have to have an education to some degree to be able to understand the text, since words like scintilla are in it, and also phraseology, which I'd say, especially for us since we're not native speakers, um, that you'd have trouble understanding that, and you'd need maybe a dictionary or some other means of, finding a meaning to the words that are used. The background of Benji Wilson is, what I could find anyway, was that he works for the Telegraph, and that he's written numerous other articles for the Telegraph. One of them was about the Netflix show Black Mirror, and another was about Game of Thrones, I believe. So he's I mean, he's been posting recently, which means he's still active and still, I assume at least, employed at the Telegraph. Now, some of the quotes that he used in the text, in the piece, are, I mean, they're mainly quotes from the exclusively quotes from Anne Widdecombe herself, talking about religious intolerance, as in, if she believes in one religion, Christianity, and she then denounces all other religions like Islam and Buddhism and the Jewish one, um, that is seen as a very intolerant thing, and that you're a bad person if you do that, that there's something wrong with it. But she believes that, I mean, you should be free to believe whatever you want and say whatever you want is wrong about all the other religions, as long as you're not actually harming people from those other religions. You should be able to live freely and do and say as you want, essentially. Kind of like a ytringsfrihet. Um, the the ethos of Benji Wilson. I mean, he's quite believable since the language he uses is he's clearly had some education where he's focused on writing quite a bit. I mean, that's probably why he's turned into a writer. Um, and all the texts he has have they're well structured and well written, as is to be expected by someone who's been working in that industry for that long. Um, yeah, he has a good vocabulary. I mean, it's not, there's not an excessive use of hard to understand words, but still, I mean, he uses them when he needs to. And some facts about Anne Widdecombe. Now, she said in the beginning of the text that most Brits they sin essentially. They go against what the Ten Commandments say. Now, she didn't say that she herself was completely kind of in line regarding the commandments, as in she hasn't, what do you call it? She hasn't held them all. Oh, that's Danish. She hasn't stuck to every single one of them without fail. Well, one of her things that she was quite proud of and apparently is famous for is that at 62, her age, she's still a virgin.